Hey, and welcome back to Gatecrashers. Today's episode, I'm chatting with Kent Jones, the director of the new film Late Fame. So the film follows a character played by Willem Dafoe as he navigates being found as a poet later in life from something he did earlier in his life, and what the disparity is between the artist he knew versus the artist of today. It's a great interview, so I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. So I do start all of my interviews off with a hard-hitting question, so I hope you're ready. What is your favorite sandwich?
Sometimes BLT is a place around the corner from me that makes a mean tuna melt. I don't know. I got to think about it. If it was 30 years ago, it would have been pastrami on rye at the Carnegie Deli, but the Carnegie Deli's gone. So,
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad. I'll let you think.
Are you in New York?
I'm in Philadelphia.
You're in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We do have a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I noticed in the film is that the Enthusiasm Society kind of reflects Willem Dafoe's early work with the Wooster Group, which is an experimental theater group. Did that factor in at all to casting him as the lead, or what was the reasoning you thought he would be a good fit for Ed?
Well, no, it didn't factor into it, but it factored into the movie in a different way because for someone who has been a poet and who's going to stand up and read poetry, you give me another actor, a list of more actors, and I'll give you all the money in my pocket. I mean, I just he's the only person to me who's viable. It's not that there aren't a lot of great actors out there. It's just that it's, he performs poetry. He's asked to read it. B, he played Pasolini beautifully. And under very difficult circumstances because he's acting in English and Italian in different scenes in the movie. But it's just like he's just great. And it's an impossible thing to do almost. And so I think, but also it's in his persona. It's in his it's Willem. It's like Robert De Niro said once, he was talking about Brando, and he said it's the poetry of his whole being. To the same with Willem.
That's a really good way to put it. Now, something I did notice in a lot of the film is that there's these really quiet, insistential moments between scenes of characters, of the walking, the tree lines, things like that I found really beautiful. What, for you, was there a goal in including all of this, kind of like a love letter to New York? Like, you're showing so much of it.
Yeah, I've lived here most over half of my life. I've seen a lot change. Most of it not for the better. Or sometimes it has been for the better and then not, and then it reverts to something else. But I think that that's true of every place, I guess. And I've just seen a lot of changes. And so I also it's in my bones, New York. And I wanted to make a movie. In the material, it's all there. The presence of the past in the present, haunting the characters, and in particular, really haunting Willem's character. And I feel it when I'm in Soho. Willem, certainly Soho was a big part of his, life, because as you said, he was, in the Wooster Group. He was a core member, from the start and part of that scene. And so, and I knew that I wanted to start the movie with, music that came out of that moment when he and I both got to New York. And, so the moments that you're talking about where, the guys are walking to the restaurant with him and Gloria, or where he's walking through Washington Square Park, or when he's walking through Soho trying to, come up with this poem. It's just, I don't know, that's the nature of being, I guess, and it's just it's very important to the fabric of this movie that you're just with him,
I am interested that you've been a New Yorker for however long. You've seen these places change and evolve over time for better or for worse. How do you think the changing landscape of the city has changed how you approach art?
Well, there's a few years back, somebody was talking to Patti Smith, and they said, if you were a young artist, what would you say to a young artist now, someone who's just trying to make their way? And she said, the first thing I'd say is, don't come to New York, because that's over. And, she's right. And that's simply a matter of economics. I don't know how anybody can afford to live here who's just coming here. But when I got here, I could. That was in 1980. It was pretty affordable for a long while. And then suddenly it really, really wasn't. And I think that changes things in a way because it makes the people who do try to create an art scene out of an aesthetic of poverty. Let's use that word, that term that a French director once used. It's just sort of like it makes it much more self-conscious and in the context of the current moment, kind of aggressive, and I don't know. But I also think because now there's a really aggressive competition for attention, and I think in what's known rightfully so as the attention economy, it's just awful. And I think also that it means that the big ticket stuff that is still present feels a little bit lonelier, I guess.
I really like the word you use as aggressive because there is one scene where they're talking about influencers and like those types of people. And I found it so funny because the enthusiasm society is kind of made up of these rich, like most of them are well off or have gone to great schools or have parents who've bought them an apartment as an investment, but they're romanticizing the people from before who lived almost in poverty because the art they were making wasn't being sold until you get big names like Warhol and things like that. But even those people who hung around him didn't have money.
Yeah.
What were you trying to capture with your group of the Enthusiasm Society? Like what were you looking to kind of convey with them?
I think people who are lost in confusion, it's a kind of delusion that you can only have if you're comfortable. Because it's kind of a group and kind of not a group. And they're kind of committed to not doing social media, but obviously not committed to doing social media. And, Clay Singer's character is, making fun of the influencers. And then one moment later, he gets a text from one of them, calls him over, and it's like, I'm calling you on your bullshit. It's somebody that he's obviously had a dalliance with. So it's just sort of like, but for people who really do have to struggle, as you say, Andy Warhol, that's back in that's further back. But if you're talking about like, let's say Philip Glass was a cab driver, Steve Reich, all these people who made that scene. I don't know what kind of money Robert Wilson had, when he was doing his first performances in lofts in Soho, but I don't think that it was the kind of he certainly wasn't being commissioned the way that he was after he became successful and did Einstein on the Beach. So it's just sort of like, they were really like, not to mention all those bands, right? Including the band whose song opens the movie, Mars. And, now it starts the other way around. It's inside out. You start with your image and your brand. And then, and here's my music or my painting or my whatever,
Feels less like finding it in a modern sense. Like you have to make that before you're going out to create the opening.
I think, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I really loved the kind of like opposite that scene, especially with them being a separate part of the room from the influencers, but like still they're all trying to achieve the same thing while kind of having mommy and daddy's money for the most part.
Yeah, trying to achieve the same thing in a way, but in a way different, which is why they're not influencers. Yeah. So they do have a very, Myers really has a very noble, kind of crazy dream where he's envisioning himself as a modern Diaghilev, but it's just sort of like, there's a nobility to it, I think. It's nuts and kind of misguided, but it's also, I find it very touching.
Yeah, at least someone's doing it.
Yeah.
Now, one scene that did make me laugh was when Ed goes to the corner store to buy cigarettes. He's like, what do the kids smoke today? And I was like, oh, it's going to be American Spirits. What do you think cigarettes have to, like, why do you think artists are so attracted to smoking? Like, it's just something that, like, it just is there. It's like part of the DNA almost.
I don't know. Are they still? I don't know.
I think a lot of the artistic people in my life probably smoke cigarettes. Right. And from what I've seen, like when I see of other people, I think it's just an interesting scene altogether.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, some of the guys smoke. Obviously Edmund's character smokes in the scene where Ed goes to his apartments. I don't know. All I can tell you is that as I remember it, the entire world was smoking until it wasn't, and now maybe more and more people do it. I don't know. But it's ruinously expensive.
Yeah. And again, that whole scene is very funny. Like it's like a nice level, because there's so much. I think this film has a lot of sadness in it. Even when it's someone being found for something they created, it's beautiful, but like there's still the sadness of what he is now. And it's just, I really did enjoy it. So thank you for your time.
No, I'm happy to talk.
Yeah. Well,
good question.
Thank you. Well, I hope the rest of your press tour is just as good.
Thanks.
I hope you have a great day.
Me too.
For your time.
Okay.
The Gay Crashers.